It's time for the greatest arc in the history of anime. Maybe. Marineford. The rumors of Whitebeard going to war with the government before Marineford actually happened were super exciting, and then the execution of this war exceeded my expectations tenfold. His dramatic arrival with his huge fleet really showed his legendary status as the strongest man in the world, and his deep desire to protect his family and those he cares about shows why he is such a loved character within the world of One Piece and by fans. His cool arrival with his ship, the Moby Dick, made me feel like a little kid. That's how cool it was. I think it's the biggest ship we've seen so far apart from Thriller Bark. When we see it rise out of the water, all the Marines were in awe. I was in awe. It also blew my fucking mind how many crew members he had and how many allies he had. It was fucking sick. It would also be fucking sick if you subscribed right now. Being properly introduced to Whitebeard's crew, especially the commanders, was a huge highlight of this arc. Then there was also the Marines lineup with admirals, vice admirals, giants, warlords, Sengoku. The list goes on. It was such a stacked lineup from both sides, and just seeing them stare down at each other is giving me goosebumps just thinking about it. Marco vs Kizaru and Jozu vs Aokiji are two fights that immediately stand out right at the beginning of the battle. Whitebeard's tremor abilities are insane, and they show why he's such a feared character. And then Aokiji is such a badass when he freezes the tsunami that Whitebeard creates. He was actually so OP for the Marines because he froze that tsunami, and then he also froze the battlefield and the ship so that the pirates could not escape if they were to retreat. He was basically like having a Pokemon that could use hail. Garp's inner struggle is so tough to watch because he's obviously a very justice-driven Marine, but he's also fighting with his obvious love for Ace, and those two things are conflicting. Yeah, it was tough to watch that happen and watch that unfold. And then we learned something that shocked me so much. I have no idea how this was never spoiled for me. It seems like a huge spoiler. It literally shattered my whole universe when I heard this. Ace is Roger's son. What the fuck is that about? That backstory and the backstory with Ace and Whitebeard adds a lot of information and emotional plot points that we needed for Marineford to really take its toll on us emotionally. It may have slowed down the skirmishes and the battles, taken away from the action, but I'm all for it because it showed why Whitebeard would be willing to rescue Ace and take on the entire naval force. Luffy's arrival with his allies that he acquired at Impel Down is a very significant turning point in the battle. His character growth and his determination to save Ace is super evident with the way he fights through tons of Marines, just knocking them down like pins, and also the way he challenges super strong opponents like Mihawk. Ivankov faces off against Kuma. It's kind of a heartbreaking fight because they go way back in the Revolutionary Army, and Kuma is nowhere near the man that Ivankov knows. So that was a little heartbreaking to watch. Vista steps in for Luffy and takes over the clash with Mihawk. He holds his own, and in that battle they're pretty much on par. But I do feel that the warlords were not giving their all to fight for the Navy. So I don't think we can say he scales equally to Mihawk. Still fucking strong though, so that was cool. Hands down, my favorite thing about this arc, maybe, yeah, it's definitely up there, is Luffy and Whitebeard's relationship. Luffy is his typical bratty self with Whitebeard at first, like calling him old man, challenging him to fights and stuff. But as the fight goes on, Whitebeard becomes impressed with Luffy, compares him to Roger in a way, and even asks his commanders to not care about him and focus all their strength on backing up Luffy, which was super touching and did make me tear up. Kobe's sudden surge of hockey momentarily halts the battle, showing his growth and potential as a fighter. Him standing up to Akainu really demonstrates how he went from a pathetic little boy to a worthy Marine under Garp's training. Sengoku aims to demoralize the pirate side by announcing that Ace would be executed ahead of schedule, And then on top of that, Akainu is causing all types of shit through being a huge aggressive force for the Navy and also spouting shit to get in the pirates' heads. His brutal attack severely injures Whitebeard, further weakening him off the squad, who was manipulated by Akainu, sneaks up on Whitebeard and stabs him. Whitebeard's get back is goated though, so let's watch that together. Luffy's battle against the admirals, including a brief scuffle with Garp, showcases how determined he is to save Ace, and also shows us how much he's grown in terms of strength and even smarts when he outwits them. The destruction of the execution podium leads to Ace and Luffy being reunited, and this was another moment that made me tear up, especially when Ace gets mad at Luffy for doing all this to rescue him. It shows how much he also cares for Luffy. Now we get on to the really sad stuff, if that wasn't sad enough. The arc reaches its super tragic climax when Ace dies at the hands of Akainu. This moment is super heartbreaking and also super pivotal to the story. Luffy's reaction is something that I can see 1,000 times and still feel something every time I see it. Also, the scene where Marco jumps in to save Luffy from Akainu is so fucking good. Whitebeard's final stand is also emotional as hell. Him declaring that the One Piece is real is so fucking iconic, even though it got memed to death. I still think it was sick. What a scene. It is unfortunately ruined by the fact that my least favorite character in the show, Blackbeard, uses this opportunity to steal Whitebeard's Devil Fruit abilities. What a prick. Shanks's perfectly timed intervention is the sickest moment of the arc. He puts fear into everyone there, even the marine higher-ups and admirals. He even offers out a fight to anyone who will take it, and nobody does. Plus, he saves Kobe from Akainu, so he's goated for that. He retrieves Ace's and Whitebeard's bodies so that he can give them a proper burial. When we see the burial a bit later on in the arc, or in the next arc, it's very depressing, and he pays Whitebeard the respect he deserves, and pays Ace the respect he deserves, even declaring that what Ace did against Akainu is something Roger would have done, which in itself is so cool because they're like the two sons of Roger and Whitebeard, in a way, even though Ace is Roger's son. But Shanks is also kind of like Roger's son. Am I being dumb? Do you get what I'm saying? I literally cannot give this arc enough praise for its emotional writing, so big props to Oda for that. And I think that perfectly takes us on to my next segment. Things I cried at. Garp's love for Ace and Luffy, Whitebeard and Ace's relationship, Whitebeard respecting Luffy, Oars' death, Ace's death, Whitebeard's death, Marco and the rest of Whitebeard's crew and allies reacting to his death, and then the burial that I just spoke about. And that's literally stuff that's off the top of my head. There's probably more stuff I can't even remember, because it's been a while since I watched this. Yeah, what a fucking emotional arc. I covered some of the post-war arc in my previous video when I spoke about the Straw Hats training during the time skip. But one thing I did not speak about is the flashback to Ace and Luffy's childhood, where we miraculously get a third brother, Sabo. In the previous 500-ish episodes, we have never seen him or heard of him. And then suddenly, there's whole storylines and flashbacks with him. So that is my one critique of this entire thing, is he really does feel like a shoehorned in character. Even though he's a cool character, it just doesn't feel natural. So that's my one critique. Everything else is perfect. Now I want to highlight some of my favorite characters. I normally do 3 of my favorite, 3 of my least favorite. This time I've got too many favorites. And I also don't want to be negative and speak about my least favorite characters. So, starting with Whitebeard. I've glazed him enough in this video. I don't need to elaborate. Marco. He's so badass and his Devil Fruit is sick. He also has a protective trait, as he showed when he protected Luffy and Whitebeard. And I love a protective character. Sengoku, I actually don't like him, but he's written really well. And he's a master tactician. And his Devil Fruit's also pretty cool. Kobe, glow up of the century. Need I say more? Doflamingo, similar to Sengoku, not a fan of him, but his speech did give me chills, and it perfectly set him up to become a future villain, I'm assuming. I mean, not assuming, I do know he does fight against Luffy later on, but this arc was a very good way to set him up for that. Shanks, the goat of this arc. We also get to see a new side of Shanks. He's been very jokey previously. Well, not jokey, but friendly with Luffy, besides the one little bar fight. But this arc, he was so serious, so emotionally deep, and super powerful. We really get to see his influence on the world in this arc, so that was sick. Jinbei, I don't know how I haven't mentioned him yet. Jinbei, Hancock, and Ivankov, all throughout the whole arc, protecting Luffy from the Marines. But this one's a special shout out to Jinbei because he took that fucking brutal blow from Akainu to save Luffy. Law, MVP for getting Luffy the fuck out of there, and also for operating on him. Akainu, I hate his guts, but he was the perfect villain for this battle because, let's be honest, the other Marines were kind of a letdown. Aokiji was cool. Kizaru was such a shit admiral. Like, compared to what we saw at Sabaody, he really did not carry at all in this arc. So Akainu was perfect. He was the aggressor. He was doing like most of the killing and the manipulating behind the scenes. So I do need to highlight that, even though he would be on a least favorite characters list. Overall, I think this is probably the most positive video I've ever made, and this is probably the best arc I've ever seen in an anime. Off the top of my head, the only arcs I can think of that would be in contention are Return to Shiganshina from Attack on Titan, the Dark Tournament arc from Yu Yu Hakusho, the Chunin exams from Naruto. Maybe those are as good, I don't know, I haven't given it enough thought. But this is definitely the best arc I've seen in One Piece, and I feel like it's gonna be the best all the way up until the end. Obviously, if there is a better one coming up, I will take that in a heartbeat, so I would not be mad, but I do think this would probably be the best, because fuck me, it's so good. And that takes us to a rating. I think I gave Summit War Saga an 8.5 out of 10, and I said Marineford is going to bump up that total mark for the saga. And the results are in. I'm giving it a 9.9 out of 10. Nothing's perfect, but this is damn close. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please do physically like it. And please do subscribe. Let me know what you think of Marineford. I'm expecting only positive stuff in the comments, surely. You guys can't beef with me this time. And I'll see you next week.